A woman is walking through one of the most famous haunted attractions in this country. Actors in masks are lunging at her face, screaming close enough to feel their breath. Everyone around her is screaming back, grabbing strangers, backing into walls, and she's laughing while reaching out, poking one of the actors on the shoulder like she's greeting an old friend at a party. Weeks earlier, a man held a knife to her throat during an actual assault, and she walked away from it totally calm. Her heart rate never even climbed. I'm Dr. Nika, and this is the last episode of the season. So before you spend even a second wishing you were her, sit with this. If fear is what's been keeping you up at night, wrecking first dates, making your chest tighten over an email, and everything you can imagine, why would getting rid of it be one of the most dangerous things that could happen to us? Her story is the answer. Let's go through it together. She's known in research papers, and I won't say her name, as a rare genetic condition that slowly destroyed both sides of a small almond-shaped structure deep in her brain called the amygdala, the alarm that's supposed to fire before you've even consciously registered a threat. By adulthood, hers was just gone. Scientists spent years testing exactly what that cost her. Horror films did nothing to her, or even haunted attractions. Snakes she claims to dislike never even raised her pulse. And that knife point assault, the one that would have left most people shaking for months, maybe even a lifetime, didn't touch her at all. The researchers who studied her case are careful to note that fear response and memory are two separate systems. So a missing fear reaction doesn't automatically mean the memory was affected the same way. Here's what nobody expects going in. A life with that volume knob on fear turned all the way down sounds like freedom, right? But it's the opposite. This woman had been taken advantage of, robbed, and placed in dangerous situations so many times because the one system built to whisper, "Get out of here" before you finish that thought, never fires. She's not braver than you. She's just missing the part of the mind that would have quietly kept her out of half of those rooms in the first place. A man with the same rare condition, damage isolated to that same structure, was tested by a total different research team on the other side of the ocean. Same results. No fear response to situations that would flood anyone else's system, and the same pattern of exploitation following him around too. Two strangers, same missing piece, same outcome. Scientists take that kind of thing seriously, since one unusual case could always be written off as a mistake, but two independent cases pointing the same direction is a lot harder to dismiss. There's a second version of the story, and it uses pain instead of fear to make a related point. Imagine a toddler who bites straight through their own tongue while teething and doesn't cry because the bite never actually hurt. A small number of children are born this way, a mutation in the gene controlling how pain signals never even reach the brain. It sounds like it might be a gift, right up until you watch what can happen. These kids break bones without noticing, or they burn themselves and keep playing. Their lifespan is unfortunately shortened most of the times, and nothing's wrong with their bodies. But the one signal built to stop catastrophic self damage before it happens doesn't even show up. Take fear away, and a person walks into danger they can't sense coming. Take pain away, and a person walks calmly through injuries they can't even feel happening. Same lesson, told twice. So here's a question. How many times have you wished, mid panic attack or mid stub toe, that you could just switch the whole thing off? Now you know exactly what that switch actually costs. Picture a guy at a party, 3 drinks in, telling everyone how he went full lizard mode during an argument at work. Everyone nods. Everyone's heard this before. Some ancient reptile buried underneath the human parts of the mind, hijacking you the second real fear hits. It's a great story. It's also just wrong. And neuroscientists have known it's wrong since the 1990s. The lizard brain idea comes from a theory that pictured the brain as three layers stacked like sediment, an old reptile brain at the bottom running raw instinct, a mammal brain in the middle handling emotion, and a human brain on top handling reason. Tidy, spread everywhere, in best selling books, at therapy offices, and even business seminars. Also, not how brains evolved. Nothing got stacked on top of a sealed off reptile core. Every part of the modern brain is a rewired version of structures that already existed in earlier animals. All of it tangled together, nothing preserved untouched in a locked room waiting to take control. There is no reptile in there waiting for its turn. What's really true is more interesting than the myth anyway. Fear relies on faster, older circuits that can act before your slower reasoning catches up. You don't need a fictional lizard to explain that. You just need to know that speed and reason were always going to trade off against each other in a system built to keep you alive first and sort out the details later. So, next time somebody tells you they want lizard brain, feel free to gently ruin the moment. There was never anything weird, just a modern brain choosing speed over accuracy for a few seconds, same as it does for everyone. Picture a fox 3 generations removed from any wild ancestor that's never once been in the hand feeding it. Floppy ear, tail curled, practically wagging at a stranger. Nobody's trained that fox to be gentle. It was just bred, generation after generation, by selecting only the calmest pups to breed. And within a number of generations, those foxes started developing floppier ears, patchier coats, curlier tails, and physical traits nobody was even trying to select for, all bundled together as a package researchers call domestication syndrome. But here's the part that should unsettle you just a little bit. Some scientists think something like that happened to us. Chimpanzees fly into reactive, explosive violence far more easily and more than we do. And one leading theory holds that our own species quietly domesticated itself over hundreds of thousands of years, not through any breeder's hand, but through our own uniquely social trick of ganging up. And I'm also not saying we're from chimpanzees or monkeys either. That was just a research. And through language and planning to remove the most volatile and violent members of a group before they could pass that negative seed forward. It's a debated idea. Not everyone agrees on which selection pressure did the actual work, but the underlying pattern holds up. A species can be shaped generation after generation by having its fastest, most explosive version of it constantly weeded out by its own social group. The exact same evolutionary sculpting that turned a wolf into a golden retriever, working quietly on us the entire time, too. Picture 4 different people, same exact moment. A car swerving into their lane out of nowhere. One slams the brakes and starts yelling before they even know what happened. One's hands freezes completely on the wheel, foot glued to the pedal, unable to move for a second longer than it should have taken. And one goes strangely quiet and still, watching it happen almost from a distance. And another one, the second it's over, immediately calls someone, voice shaking, needing to hear another person's voice more than anything else. 4 different reactions to the same threat, and every single one of them is normal and correct. Fight and flight get all the attention, but they were only ever half the picture. Freeze belongs on that list too. The body going rigid, then lashing out or running useful because a lot of predators throughout history responded to movement more than stillness. Freezing bought silence and a chance to be overlooked so you can do something about it. There's a version past just freezing that surprises most people the first time they hear it explained the right way, and it matters enough that I want to slow down here. In moments of extreme threat, mostly during non consensual encounters, a person's body can lock into something called tonic immobility, a total involuntary paralysis where the body won't respond to conscious commands to move, speak, or fight back, no matter how badly the person wants to. This happens to a lot of survivors, more than half reporting immobility. A meaningful portion describing it at the most extreme end of the scale. There's no choice in it and no weakness, just the identical shutdown response documented across the animal kingdom. Prey going limp in a predator's grip once escape has become impossible, sometimes even reducing the odds an attacker continues. Because completely unresponsive target can read on some ancient level as no longer worth the effort. Survivors of this often carry deep shame afterward, thinking they should have fought or screamed or something. The truth is, their body ran a program older than language, one that wasn't available to their conscious will in the first place. If nothing else lands from this episode, let that one land. A body that goes still under extreme threat wasn't failing you. It was just running code older than fear learned to use words. The fourth response, the phone call, got less research attention for an uncomfortable reason. Almost all the original stress research was done on men. When scientists finally studied how women in particular respond to serious threat, they found a pattern that didn't fit fight or flight at all. Instead of fighting or fleeing, stressed women were more likely to protect and comfort their children and seek out close friends and family. Scientists named this tend and be friend, tied to oxytocin, a hormone that shows up more powerfully in the female stress response, calming the nervous system while pulling a person to a connection instead of away from it. One leading explanation is kind of simple. A mother protecting her young and pulling trusted allies close during a crisis likely had a better shot at everyone surviving it together than one who fought or fled alone. That's a plausible story, not a proven one, but it fits the pattern enough that most researchers in this space take it seriously. You know, the friend who, the second something goes wrong, immediately starts a group chat instead of handling it alone? That's not her being dramatic. That's tend and befriend running as designed. Take a second right now and think back to the last time something scared you. Not annoyed or stressed you, like really scared you. What did your body do first before you had time to think about it all? Did you get loud? Did your legs want to move and you couldn't? Wanted to scream? Whichever one it was, you weren't choosing it. You were watching one of those four ancient tools fire automatically, the same one your body has probably reached for first your whole life. Another question. Is the amount of fear you carry really yours? Did something happen to you that built it, or were you just built differently than the rest? Picture two coworkers walking to their cars in the same dark garage after their late shift. One of them barely notices the empty stairwell. The other one has their keys laced between their fingers before even out the door, and has for years without ever deciding to start doing it. Women are diagnosed with anxiety at close to twice the rate of men, and nobody's found one clean cause for it. Hormones, brain structure, and just the fact that women statistically live through more of the specific situations that build threat sensitivity in the first place. Probably all three together. But to think about it, Given everything you just heard about tend and befriend, that heightened alertness might not be a flaw at all, and just a survival map running a bit different. Now picture identical twins raised in the same house, same parents, same everything, and one jumps at every loud noise while the other one barely blinks. That gap is real and it's been measured directly. Twin studies comparing identical twins who share all their genes against fraternal twins who share about half have found that anxiety shows a real genetic component, landing somewhere between 30 and 60% depending on the condition. That leaves a wide, meaningful share, still shaped by everything else upbringing, culture, and what happened to a person. You didn't choose to be more anxious than the people around you, and you weren't handed a fixed script either. You inherited a dial turned somewhat higher or lower before you ever took a breath, and life spent years turning that same dial further. A person carrying a lot of fear isn't failing at something everyone else finds easy. Some of them started the race already carrying more weight through no fault of their own. Someone drops a stack of plates behind you in a quiet kitchen, and before a conscious thought forms, you jump. And then, after your brain catches up enough to think, oh, it's just plates, the gap between the flinch and the thought is the fastest fear response your body has. It runs through a short circuit connecting your ears straight to your spine and your major muscle groups, skipping the slower thinking parts of the brain. It fires in a tenth of a second, sometimes less, long before the part of you capable of recognizing that was just plates weigh in. This is why a jump scare works on you, even when you know exactly when it's coming. Knowing doesn't slow the reflex down at all, because the reflex was never rooted through the part of you that knows things in the first place. It's the rawest, fastest layer of everything. Imagine walking down a hiking trail, which I never can because there's no way I'll ever hike, but let's pretend, and then catching a coiled shape out of the corner of your eye. Your whole body jolts, heart slamming, before your conscious mind has even finished the sentence. That's a rope, not a snake. That half-second gap is the entire reason fear always seems to beat your time thinking to the punch. Information from your eyes or ears split and travels down two separate paths at once. One path runs through your visual cortex first, slow and detailed, building a clear picture before passing it to your amygdala. The other path skips all that, sending a rough, low resolution version directly to your senses, straight to the amygdala, arriving dramatically faster and not that accurate. Scientists nickname this the low road, a simplified map of a more complicated wiring diagram that's still being debated and refined. But the basic idea has held up. By the time the real picture arrives and corrects the mistake, your heart's already in your mouth. This isn't your rational mind losing a fair fight to your emotion. It's two delivery systems racing each other. One built for speed, the other built for accuracy. And evolution decided a long time ago that during a real emergency, fast and sometimes wrong beats right and too late to matter. So think about someone flinching hard at a car backfiring 3 blocks away, years after something traumatic happened to them. Because as we talked about it before, trauma changes the architecture of the brain running the show. Brain scans of people who lived through trauma show three consistent shifts. The amygdala gets measurably more reactive, firing harder at things that wouldn't look like a threat to anyone else. The hippocampus normally files memory away as something that already happened. Under real trauma, it shrinks instead. Part of why a trauma memory can resurface feeling like it's happening right now than something long over. And the prefrontal cortex, the part capable of stepping in and saying the alarm is overreacting, calm down, shows reduced activity, losing some of its ability to pull the brakes on the amygdala once it's fired. Put those three together, and you get a brain that's faster to alarm, slower to file danger as finished, and weaker at standing back down once it's already going. This is a nervous system that adopted exactly the way it was designed to a world that, for that person, really was so dangerous as it felt. The tragedy is the same system that kept them alive during the real danger that doesn't know how to stand down once the danger is over. I know someone who used to full body panic at the sight of a dog, any dog, even the tiny ones that look like they'd lose a fight to a house cat. Years of gentle sitting near calm dogs, closer each time. And now she's the one on the floor at every party, letting any dog use her as a pillow. Nobody talked her out of the fear. She just gave her nervous system enough boring, uneventful evidence to finally believe her. And that's the real mechanism behind exposure therapy. If your fear system learns faster through direct, repeated, safe experiences than argument, then the only way out has to run through the same channel the fear came in on. Talking a person out of fear doesn't work on its own because the fear was never appeared through conversation. It came through an ancient, fast physical learning system that doesn't care what your reasoning brain has concluded. Walk into the fear thing gradually and safely lets that some old system collect new data the slow way it actually trusts, building a competing memory that says this specific thing didn't hurt me, right alongside the older memory that still insists it might. You're not overriding evolutionary wiring with a clever argument. You're just speaking to it in the only language it was built to listen to. So let's talk about two people bitten, once each, one by a snake, one by their own dog. Years later, the snake still gives a full body reaction. The dog bite barely even registers as a memory at all. Same intensity of pain, different staying power. Imagine this test running in labs for decades. A picture gets paired with a small shock until that image triggers fear. Do it with a snake or a spider, then stop the shocks and watch how long the fear takes to fade. Do the same with a picture of a weapon that's more dangerous to a person or something strange happens. The fear tied to snakes and spiders sticks around longer and resists fading more than the fear tied to modern threats, even though you're more likely to be hurt by a weapon. So they call this preparedness, the idea that categories of danger our ancestors forced across an enormous stretch of time got hardwired into how efficiently the brain learns to fear them, while categories that have only existed a century or two haven't had enough evolutionary time to earn that same shortcut. Not every study lands cleanly on this, and the debate is still open on exactly how much comes from ancient wiring versus culture. But the core pattern holds enough to make the point. Your brain isn't grading danger by what injures people today. It's still working off a syllabus written for a world that stopped existing a very long time ago. So, if someone's hands shaking through an entire presentation like a nervous wreck over a slide deck that can't physically harm a single person in that room, meanwhile, that same person drives home afterward without a second thought in the one activity that's more likely to injure them. A lot of people, including me, carry a real disruptive fear of public speaking or small crawlers like spiders. I hate them. And then there are some people from enclosed spaces and so forth. Our brains aren't bad at math here. Our fear system was never built to calculate long term risks. It reacts instantly to specific ancient categories: a predator's gaze, a stranger's unpredictable temper, or even a small enclosed space with no way out. Cars have only existed about a century. Our fear systems had a few 100,000 years to calibrate itself on threats that mostly don't exist anymore, while staying kind of blind to the slow modern ones actually doing the damage. Public speaking specifically ties back to something older than stage fright. Our ancestors lived in small groups where belonging wasn't a nice bonus, it was survival itself. Getting cast out, mocked, or humiliated in front of the people carried real physical consequences. No group meant no shared food or protection. Standing in front of a room now, feeling every eye on you, judging, potentially about to reject you, triggers that same ancient alarm that once meant banishment. So, thank you, ancestors, for this fear. Your career doesn't end if the presentation goes badly. Well, most of the time. Your ancestors' lives very well might have. And your amygdala never got the memo explaining the difference. So next time you're sweating through a slide deck in a conference room with bad lighting and one guy on his phone, know that some part of your nervous system believes this quarterly update could end with you exiled into the wilderness. It's very committed to a threat that stopped mattering 10,000 years ago. So let's talk about that someone who's standing in a parking lot. Keys already laced between their fingers, crossing to the far side to their car, full of anxiety for no reason they could explain, just a feeling. They've measured that feeling directly. In one classic study, people drew cards from 4 decks, too rigid to look appealing, but loud up on brutal losses over time. 2 that paid out smaller but steadier. Long before players could explain which one of the decks were dangerous, their skin already started sweating every time their hand hovered near one of the bad decks. A real physical stress response firing ahead of any verbal reasoning about which choice was risky. Players who developed this early physical flinch went on to avoid the bad decks reliably, even when insisting under questioning they had no idea yet which one of the decks were the losing ones. Damage the part of the brain responsible for generating that quiet physical signal, and the pattern breaks. People keep drawing from the losing decks over and over because slow, conscious reasoning isn't enough to steer behavior without that early bodily nudge backing it up. That gut feeling people describe right before something goes wrong isn't mystical, it's just fast. Your body finishes its threat calculation a full step ahead of the part of you that puts feelings into words. Because it's the one category of fear your ancestors never had to prepare you for at all. And there are 3 of them closing in from completely different directions. So you refresh the same 3 news apps at midnight, telling yourself this is the last time, and meaning it, and not meaning it at all. Echo anxiety, a chronic dread about a warming, unstable future, has become common enough that researchers now treat it as its own category. It's a slow threat. You can't fight or flee or even picture arriving through headlines and data instead of a flicker of movement at a tree line. Your fear system has no ancient slot for that. Doom scrolling runs on a simpler engine sitting right next to it. Your fear system wants resolution, and the feed never provides it. Every scroll promises the update that closes the gap, and instead opens a new one, so the alarm stays lit with nowhere to land. We're not going to go into this too much, we talked about it. So, the newest one strikes at something your fear system has never once had to question its entire history. Even if your own eyes and ears can be trusted at all, for as long as human senses have existed, seeing something happen was about as close to proof as any person could get. AI generated videos and audio is breaking that trust down fast enough that researchers studying the problem describe growing rates of people mistaking real footage for fake and fake footage for real is a new and still developing threat to how confident anyone can be at what they're looking at. I've heard people getting a phone call that sounds exactly like their own mother's voice, panic, saying she's in trouble, needs money right now, when really it's just 3 seconds of audio pulled off a video she posted, run through a software, handed to a stranger who has no idea he just heard his mother beg for help. Your fear system has no ancient category filed away for that. It just has the oldest instinct it owns. That voice is real, helper, and for the first time in our history, that instinct can be weaponized by a scammer. Every threat this season had a clear source our alarm system could aim itself at. These three don't. They're faceless, and that may be exactly why they made a strange low-grade unease in so many of us. Instead of a sharp spike of fear, we know something's wrong. We just don't have anywhere to point. I know a woman whose daughter, right around around age 4, started insisting something lived under her bed. I think a lot of us do know that person. It's not from a movie. Nobody told her a scary story. She'd never seen anything frightening in her life. Every night, same thing. Someone had to check under her bed before the lights went off. Her mother found it exhausting until she understood exactly what was happening. Her daughter wasn't broken and nothing supernatural was going on. She was running a program written for a 4-year-old born 100,000 years earlier, one that needed to worry about what waited past the edge of the fire. Childhood fears follow a schedule most parents never even notice. Infants unable to move or defend themselves, fear strangers and separations from their caregiver. The two dangers a helpless baby would actually face. Once a baby's mobile enough to reach a real edge, fear of heights show up right on cue. A few years later, once a child is exploring further from the caregivers and vulnerable for the first time, fear of the dark and of animals arrive, timed perfectly to the moment they become independent enough to wander into real trouble. Later, once social, standing starts mattering more than physical survival. Fear shifts to embarrassment and rejection. Nobody teaches a 4-year-old to fear the dark on a schedule. It was already built in. Here's where fear gets disturbing, so brace for this one. What if you could inherit a fear you never even experienced yourself? Think of a mouse fathering, mouse babies, is it called? What are they called? Pups? That he'll never even meet, passing down a fear he never taught them. That's an actual study, by the way. Male mice were trained to fear the scent of cherry blossoms, pairing that smell with a small shock until the mice were scared at the scent. Then they let those mice father the next generation, pups who were never exposed to the smell and never shocked once in their lives. They still startled harder at the exact smell than pups fathered by unshocked mice, and were measurably better at detecting even faint traces of it. The following generation, grandchildren even further removed, still showed the same heightened sensitivity and physical differences went with it. More neurons devoted to that specific odor, changes passed down through genes that learned behavior. So more neurons devoted to that specific odor, changes passed down through genes, then learned behavior. The mice weren't born anxious in general, only their sensitivity to that one specific odor had been dialed up, passed down like a specific warning left behind by a father they'd never even met. Scientists are careful about how far this extends to people, since inheritance works differently in us. And this doesn't mean a parent's learned fear gets directly copied into a grandchild's genes the way it's sometimes described. What the research supports is more modest and still fascinating. That something about a parent's specific fear might leave some kind of mark on the next generation before that child has lived a single day of their own life to earn it. It's like watching someone get chased by a bear in a movie and barely flinching. Then someone describes forgetting a container of leftover fish in a hot car for a week, and your entire body revolts. Same intensity, completely different department. Disgust runs alongside fear so closely the two sometimes get confused, but they're not the same system. Disgust works as a kind of behavioral immune system, a first line of defense that flags likely sources of infection, using nothing but sight and smell before any actual germ has entered your body. Show people photographs of disease or a festering wound alongside neutral images, and people across different cultures reliably rate the disease linked images as more disgusting. Evidence this isn't just learned manners, it even flexes with circumstance. Rising during pregnancy when immune defenses naturally lower. Rising again during real outbreaks moving throughout a community. Fear pulls you away from things that might attack you right now. Disgust pulls you away from things that might quietly kill you weeks later through infection you'd never see coming. And even talking about this, not even looking at images, I flare up my OCD. And talking about that, let's talk about someone that told me they felt broken for still flinching at loud noises years after everything that scared them had ended. I want to leave you with that actual research on that feeling because the story you tell yourself about your own fear changes how much it costs you. Someone who believes their anxiety proves something's broken in them carries more shame alongside the fear itself, and shame has its own real costs, more avoidance and slower recovery. Someone who understands the same anxiety as an old system doing exactly what it was built to do, just aimed at the wrong century, carries less of that shame, even when the identical fear response underneath. A fear you understand as ancient, adaptive, and even mistimed is a fear you can work with. A fear you believe something's wrong with you is the fear you're more likely to fight or let quietly run your life instead. Like a mother of a chronically ill child, after 10 years into caregiving, she looks tired in a way that sleep's stopped fixing a long time ago. Tired in her skin. You could see it in her eyes. Scientists measured women like her against mothers of healthy kids and found the exhaustion showed up more than just her face. It was written into their cells. The caps on the end of your chromosomes, called telomeres, shorten a little with every cell division. And the most chronically stressed mothers in that study had telomeres that look older than their real age. One real piece of evidence that fear left running too long stops being just a feeling and starts becoming a cost your body pays. One bad scare never did that kind of damage. The alarm that never gets the switch off did. So here's what I want to leave you with at the close of the season. Stop treating fear as your enemy. It isn't malfunction when it fires over a coat on a hanger, or a silence from someone you love, or even a room full of strangers waiting for you to speak. It's running exactly the program it was built to run, using rules written for a world that mostly didn't exist anymore. The problem was never that fear exists. Fear kept every single one of our ancestors alive to have us. The problem is the world changed fast, faster than any nervous system could keep up with. And ours is still doing its best with instructions written for a much older and a physically more dangerous place. You're not broken for flinching at shadows or weak for feeling your chest tighten over something that should have mattered this much. You're not a failure if your body went still instead of fighting back when it mattered most. Always remember that you're running ancient software on modern hardware. The software was never the problem, just long overdue for an update nobody's written yet. Fear isn't your enemy. The problem isn't that fear exists, it's that the world changed faster than the brain did. That's the season. Every episode and every story, all of it pointing back to the same simple truth. Your fear was never the problem. It's just old and the world got fast. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next season.